Hello and welcome to Rehab Reels, conversations on physical medicine and rehabilitation, hosted by Dr. Gwen Soa. My name is Andy Ziegler with the University of Pittsburgh and UPMC. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us today for a special presentation on assistive technology with Dr. Brad DiCiano. You may submit questions for our presenters through the Q&A feature on your screen. We will do our best to get to as many questions as possible during the allotted time. Our series host, Dr. Gwen Soa, is the endowed professor and chair of the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and is the director of the UPMC Rehabilitation Institute. She holds joint appointments in the Departments of Orthopedic Surgery and Bioengineering, and has served as a clinician scientist in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation for over 15 years. Our special guest presenter this evening is Dr. Brad DiCiano. Dr. DiCiano serves as medical director at the UPMC Center for Assistive Technology, director of the UPMC Adult Spina Bifida Clinic, and medical director and COO of the Human Engineering Research Laboratories. Dr. DiCiano's clinical interests are in the areas of spina bifida and assistive technology. His research interests focus on developing and studying interventions targeted to improving health and wellness in individuals with complex disabilities, including wheelchairs, mobile health, and preventative care programs. Dr. Soa and Dr. DiCiano, thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Soa, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Andy, and it's a real pleasure to host this session tonight with Dr. DiCiano. So as you heard, Dr. DiCiano wears many hats at our university and in our department and in the School of Medicine. He's an incredibly accomplished academician. He's what we refer to as a triple threat in the business, which is excellence in clinical care, in research, and also in education. But what's common in all of the activities that Dr. DiCiano has excelled in is his commitment to diversity and inclusion of all types, and really promoting value and equity and reducing barriers that people have to fully engaging in their lives. So advocacy is really central to his work, and I think you'll hear that theme in his presentation tonight. He's a brilliant researcher, he's very innovative and creative, and he's absolutely a master educator. In addition to his extensive publications, which help him to disseminate his work more broadly, he's also training the next generation of our leaders in this space. He serves as an assistant dean in the Pitt School of Medicine, as well as leading a national program called the Rehabilitation Experience for Medical Students, the Rehab Research Experience for Medical Students, which really gives medical students an exposure to rehabilitation early on in hopes of recruiting the best and the brightest to our field to carry on some of the excellent work that you're going to hear about tonight. So Dr. DiCiano, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to speak tonight, especially about a topic that I'm so passionate about and really speaks to my roots here at the University of Pittsburgh. So thanks everyone for attending tonight. I will be talking about assistive technology. And to start, just a couple of disclaimers. I will be talking about some research that we have been engaged in that has been funded through various federal agencies and foundations that I wanted to acknowledge, but I don't have any financial relationships with any companies or products that may be mentioned. What is assistive technology? Well, it can be any item, device, or even software, and it's something that's used by a person with a disability or by their caregivers. And I like to think of assistive technology as something that promotes independence and really empowers people to manage things related to their function, to their activities, to their participation. I wanted to talk a little bit about my background so that you can understand why I've always been so interested in assistive technology. Many years ago, when I was in high school and college, I worked for summer camps for kids with disabilities. One of those summer camps for many years that I worked at was the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And through that camp, I learned a lot about assistive technology. I learned that it can really facilitate somebody to do the activities that they want to do. And we were able to get kids to go horseback riding, to go fishing, to play adaptive sports, all with different types of assistive technology. But I also learned that it can be a huge barrier if it's not good quality assistive technology. If someone doesn't have the right wheelchair, or if it's low quality, if it's not durable, it can really be a barrier to their activities. I went to the University of Pittsburgh as an undergraduate, went to medical school at Pitt, and also did my residency here at Pitt. So I've been here a long time, and I've been very fortunate to have many great mentors along the way. Very early on, I met Eric Hoffman, and he's a geneticist. He's a researcher who studies muscular dystrophy. And at the time, his lab was located at Pitt. And one summer, he brought his entire lab to the summer camp so that all of his staff and his trainees could really interact with the people that they were studying. They had never met people with muscular dystrophy. And by meeting him, it was a great experience. He gave me the opportunity to volunteer in his lab for the summer. And that's where I really became interested in research and decided that I wanted to do research in some way as part of my career. And then later in medical school, I met Dr. Mike Boninger and Dr. Rory Cooper, who many of you probably know. They're pioneers and really world-renowned in the areas of assistive technology. I started off with an early summer research project as a medical student involving wheelchair research and shoulder injuries, and just really fell in love with assistive technology research and the field of physiatry. That's how I decided to become a rehab physician. So I credit all three of these gentlemen for putting me on a direction that led me to where I am today. I describe my area of work as three overlapping areas. So it's where assistive technology overlaps with both disability and value-based care. I'm really interested in how people can use technology to improve their outcomes. And there are different technologies that sort of overlap these areas, being telerehabilitation or telemedicine, rehabilitation engineering devices, and especially mobile health technologies. And tonight I'm going to focus a lot on rehab engineering devices and mobile health in this talk. Where do people get assistive technology? Well, here at UPMC, we have a center called the UPMC Center for Assistive Technology. This is a collaboration between UPMC and the University of Pittsburgh. We have a multidisciplinary team in our clinic that is comprised of physiatrists like myself, a physician assistant. We have physical and occupational therapists. We have speech language pathologists, rehab engineers, and an audiologist. And together as a team, we evaluate people who come in looking for technologies that can solve different problems that they may be having. One big area is seating and mobility. The technologies related to seating and mobility might include custom ultralight manual wheelchairs, power wheelchairs, scooters, even hybrid devices that involve power assist devices that you can add on to manual wheelchairs to enable you to propel them more easily. We call these complex rehabilitation technologies because they have a lot of complexity. They require custom fitting and custom orders, and they require a specialized team to evaluate you for that type of equipment. We can also evaluate people for positioning. Sometimes people have equipment, but because of scoliosis or postural differences or pressure injuries of the skin, they may need special positioning in their devices as they sit. We also do evaluations for augmentative and alternative communication. And by this, I mean basically speech generation. So there are devices that can speak for you or assist you in speaking so that you can communicate. Many of these kinds of devices are tablet-based. We also do evaluations for computer access, and this might involve software. So, for example, software that converts your speech into text so that you can speak to write. and hardware such as mice or keyboards that might need to be adapted if you need to access them in a special way. And along with this, we also do evaluations for adaptive gaming, so adaptive controls for video games, and some smart home technology, so that allows you to control the environment in your home. Also, we have an adaptive driving program, which involves evaluating people's ability to drive, especially after a new injury, or giving them recommendations about what modifications to a vehicle might be needed in order to be able to drive. So that might include, for example, hand controls. It might involve needing a ramp or a lift for your wheelchair. And finally, we do evaluations in the area of auditory technology, particularly for people who have vocational rehabilitation services and they want to go back to work or school, but they need a hearing evaluation and or hearing aids to help them in their work or school endeavors. And I also want to talk about Assist Plus. This is a really exciting new service and physical location that we're going to be rolling out soon. Assist Plus is a patient experience innovation center, and it will be physically located in the new tower, the Mercy Vision and Rehabilitation Tower that will be next to UPMC Mercy Hospital. It's going to be a physical space where patients and students and staff, anyone can come and visit us. It will be a place where we will have technologies available that people can demo and learn about and get connected to resources so that they can learn how to acquire these technologies. And this will be different than what we offer at CAT, or the Center for Assistive Technology. This center will focus on other types of innovative technologies. So think utensils and gadgets, smartphone apps, wheelchair accessories, adaptive clothing, adaptive fitness equipment, disability advocacy materials, and will also be a hub. So people who work anywhere throughout the UPMC system who want information about different technologies to solve a problem can remotely connect into us, and we can consult with them and provide recommendations about how different types of technologies can solve the problems that they're having. And this is going to be a really exciting space on the cutting edge of technologies so that we can always be bringing the best technologies to our patients. I also want to introduce the Human Engineering Research Laboratories, or HERL. This is the laboratory that's sort of the sister space to our Center for Assistive Technology. HERL is where all the research and development is done. HERL is a collaboration among the VA, the University of Pittsburgh, and UPMC. And our mission is to really improve the mobility and function of people with disabilities so that they can participate fully in society, live independently in the community. And we do this through engineering research and medical rehabilitation research. We have several different thrusts of our research. And before I get into that, I want to point out that our research is very person focused. So the person with the disability is at the center of everything we do, engaged in a lot of our research. Our research has implications for universal design and policy, including funding for assistive technology. And we also have lots of training programs for students going into this field and for people with disabilities. Our first area or research thrust where we focus on projects is advanced wheelchair design. And this involves a few different types or pathways of research. One is power wheelchairs. So we are developing power wheelchairs that have robotic capabilities. So an example is a robotic wheelchair that can descend a curb, or wheelchairs that can self-level when they go over uneven terrain. We also look at alternative power sources. So we're developing alternatives to the typical battery and electronics, which can be a problem for many power wheelchair users. The picture here shows a a wheelchair that's powered purely by pneumatic technology or compressed air. It has no batteries, no electronics, and so it's completely waterproof. We also do research with compact, foldable, lightweight manual wheelchairs, making them easier to travel with, easier to custom fit to people. And we do research with devices that can be put onto chairs as sensors that allow the chairs to avoid obstacles and negotiate around complex environments. A second big area of research for us is smart device applications. So this involves smart home technologies, environmental control technologies, and wearables. So devices that you can wear on your body. Third is human machine interfaces. So this involves technologies that allow you to control other technologies with different parts of your body. So many people interact with technologies with their hands, but some people are not able to do that. So we develop a lot of alternative controls so that people can use what abilities they have to control devices like robots. We also develop the software that people can interact with that makes use of those devices easier. And finally, our fourth area is assistive robotics. So we do a lot of work with different types of robotics for getting in and out of bed or in and out of your wheelchair. Also autonomous systems. So that means systems that can be programmed to do things with just minimal input from the user. So that might mean a robot that can do things on its own to help somebody, or a wheelchair that can do certain tasks through programs, and also navigation systems that help the user while they're in their wheelchair, as well as exoskeleton devices. So many people ask, how do you take an idea all the way to a product that's an assistive technology that somebody actually can use in everyday life? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We go by a mantra of nothing about us without us, which means that the person with the disability or the end user, in some cases, it might be the caregiver, it might be clinicians, people that are interacting with the technology in some way should be engaged in every step of the process, all from the idea all the way to when it becomes a final product. And so the way that we do that is we generate ideas first. So this might come directly from a person with a disability. It might come, for example, in a clinical scenario at the Center for Assistive Technology where we realize we could develop something to solve a problem. The idea could come from another research project like a focus group or a survey. We're very engaged with the disability community to generate ideas. Then from that idea, we create a prototype. That prototype is evaluated by those end users, and that prototype is refined. And when it gets to the point that it's ready to be evaluated more thoroughly, we will do what's called user evaluations. And those user evaluations might involve assessing whether the technology is accessible, whether it's usable, and whether it's feasible to use in a particular environment. And then finally, we'll conduct further standards testing. So there are international standards that govern the safety and durability of assistive technologies. There's these standards for many types of different assistive technologies, and we can do the independent testing to determine whether those technologies are safe and durable and meet those standards. So this is a cycle. It's an iterative process that requires us to go through that research and development loop a couple of times until we get to a product that is finished. When it is finished and it's ready to get into the hands of people, we are able to do some small scale manufacturing in our lab to produce several or multiple units of the products that we've designed. But when it gets to the point that it needs more broad or wide scale dissemination, then we will partner with companies and outsource that product to companies to get into the hands of people. So then people begin using it, and that generates more ideas, and the life cycle starts over. Next, I want to take you on a tour of our laboratory. So this is a peek into our prototyping facility. And our prototyping facility allows us to work with any material, basically. We like to say that we can build a car because it's true. We have the capabilities of developing and working with all the materials, creating all the parts, creating the electronics that are needed. So we can basically work with materials in a couple of different ways. One is through additive manufacturing. Many people know of 3D printing. That is an example of additive manufacturing. This means when you take materials and you add them together to create a part or component of something that you're building. We also work with subtractive manufacturing, and this is when you cut a material or break it down into smaller pieces to get to the part or component that you want to build. And that might involve milling machines or water jets or lasers to get that material down to the part that you want. So we use a combination of additive and subtractive, and we build our prototypes in this facility. We can bring our files down that we develop, and a lot of these devices are computer automated and allows us to build the prototypes quickly and efficiently and multiple versions of them at once. I also wanted to point out that our facility is fully accessible. So we have a lot of staff and students and faculty who have disabilities. And we also have training programs for people who want to go into these fields. So let's say you want to learn to become a machinist. We have the capability of bringing people in and training them to use the equipment so that they can go out into a field of STEM. Next, we will do user evaluations once we have a prototype that's ready for people to try out. The user evaluations might involve the person with a disability, it might involve a caregiver, it might involve clinicians, and it involves just testing out the prototype, using it, interacting with it, giving feedback on it. This might occur in a laboratory setting, or it might also occur in another setting, like in a person's home. And then finally, before I mention standards testing, this is where we're testing a device to determine whether it meets durability and safety standards. You can think of standards testing like crash testing that we do for vehicles. We basically destroy one or multiple versions of a product to see whether it will withstand certain perturbations, certain activities that could potentially break it down and make it less durable or safe. Many products are expected to last a certain lifetime. So a wheelchair, for example, is generally expected to last about 5 years. So we have to simulate 5 years of use of a wheelchair by putting it on different machines that simulate different things that it will experience in everyday life. So like falling down over a curb or going over thresholds multiple times or heating it up or freezing it so that it's exposed to different temperatures. And then by doing that, we can determine whether the device or prototype meets the standards for durability and safety. And if not, we can generate a report about what needs to be fixed on that technology so that it can be made better. And Hurl, our laboratory, has created lots of different products that are out there being used by millions of people every day. A lot of people probably know about a lot of these products, and they may not know that they came from Hurl. So I wanted to talk about a few of them. When we're thinking about power wheelchairs, there is software inside most power wheelchair joysticks that came from our lab. It allows the joystick to be more programmable. We also, I mentioned earlier, the pneumatic wheelchair that is powered by compressed air. That is a product that is being used in a water park in Texas for kids with disabilities. And they've also been used in some big box stores. We also have what's called the virtual seating coach, which was an app system that was developed here at Hurl to give feedback or coaching to wheelchair users about how they're using their power wheelchair, how they're moving the seat around on their wheelchair to relieve pressure. And that is now available on all Permobil power wheelchairs. We also developed the Smart Wheel, which is a device that allows a researcher to study how somebody is propelling their wheelchair. That's being used in research and also in clinics. And its sister product, which is the push-arm activated power assist wheel, is a device that helps a person propel a manual wheelchair because it has an instrumented or computerized wheel that you can place on the chair. And as far as manual wheelchairs, we've developed ergonomic hand rims or push rims that allow a smoother propulsion of the wheel, cross brace frames that allow the wheelchair to fold more easily, and caster forks, which connect to the caster, the front little wheels on the wheelchair. So these are things you will see out in the community every day, and all of these came from our lab. I wanted to shift gears for a couple minutes and just also talk a little bit about mobile health. So this is another big area of research for us. We've built mobile systems that allow people to empower themselves to take care of their medical needs and provide more opportunity for them to continue to live in the community. One system that we built is called I'm Here. It stands for the Interactive Mobile Health and Rehabilitation System. On the patient side or the client side, they use a smartphone app. The app can also be placed on a tablet. And there are lots of different modules within that app that are plug and play. And the modules all allow and provide different functionality for the user to manage different things. So there are apps that are medically focused that allow the user to do things like remember their medication list and report whether they're taking their medications, collect photographs of different conditions like a pressure injury of the skin and report it, carry out surveys, like for example, reporting symptoms of mood. And then there's also some modules related to community living, like being able to assign tasks to caregivers to let them know what you need help with, organize your appointments and schedules and transportation, and so forth. The app also connects with peripheral devices, so we can add things in like scales or activity monitors. And then all the data that's being collected from the patient or client side is flowing into a secure cloud. And people on the other end can access that information. So on the clinician side, a physician or other clinicians can monitor a whole group of patients using the system. The data can also be monitored from people who work at community-based organizations like service workers or case managers. And then we also have interfaces for other people who may be involved in the person's management, like caregivers. That might be a family caregiver, a professional caregiver like an attendant care worker, or even a peer. And then this way, the people can share data, interact, and see how they can support the client in the best way possible. And I'm really excited about a new opportunity that we've had here at UPMC to integrate this system right into our electronic medical record. So at UPMC, we use Epicare as our medical record. On the outpatient side, we have a system called Zelf. Zelf is a system that allows a clinician, like a physician, for example, to prescribe digital technologies to patients. So the physician can prescribe, for example, videos or educational material, or the physician can actually prescribe smartphone apps. And the physician will open the chart, create an order just like they're ordering a medication, but in this case, they're ordering an app. And then the patient will get an alert that allows them to download and securely register that app so that they'll have access to it on their phone. And then when they use the app, the data will flow back. And when the physician sees the patient in a clinic visit, they'll be able to open a dashboard right in the patient's medical record and see a summary of the data as to how they've been using the app. So in this example, The physician can see, how often the person has been taking or missing their different medications, what exercises they've been engaged in, and they'll even be able to see things like the last photograph of a wound that they might have been reporting. We're doing research in mobile health in a lot of different areas. As I mentioned, there's an interface that we're able to reach out and work with community-based organizations. So we're trying to provide functionality in our mobile health systems to support a lot of the services that people are getting in the community, like attendant care services or services for people with intellectual disability. We're using our mobile health system as basically a way to conduct precision medicine. An example is patients with low back pain. So we want to be able to gather data from a lot of different sources and combine it to help us with better decision making, to learn, what treatments work best for certain patients in certain situations. And we're also evaluating how mobile health can support caregivers, not only in their support for the people they care for, but also how they can support themselves. And we're also doing work with large assistive technology data sets. I mentioned before the virtual seating coach. Many wheelchairs like this now have cloud capability, and users can decide to upload their data into the cloud, which allows us to understand how these technologies are used on an everyday basis, and creating opportunities for some of the largest data sets we've ever had of device users. We also do research on patient-reported outcomes, so ways that patients report that their technologies are helping them in everyday life. And a lot of this work will inform changes in policy. One area that we really feel needs to be changed is in terms of how assistive technologies are covered by insurance, especially repairs of assistive technology. And we're doing a lot of work right now that I think eventually will lead to some positive changes in that area. A quick shout out to the International Seating Symposium. If you are interested in assistive technology, especially seating and mobility technology, this is one of the largest conferences for that topic. It is held in Pittsburgh and it's coming up in April. And I will end there. I provided some resources for you in case you're interested in this topic, particularly the UPMC Physician Journal, which is a video that will give you a more in-depth tour of our laboratory. And thank you very much for attending and for listening.
Thanks so much, Brad. That was great to see so much of the creativity and the exciting technology that is both out there already and coming down the pike. So as people are thinking of questions, feel free to post questions in the Q&A section, but maybe I could start by just asking a few questions about the Center for Assistive Technology.
Sure.
This is a really unique offering that we have here that is a really wonderful collaboration between our schools of medicine and schools of health and rehab sciences and clinicians and scientists and engineers all working together. So can you tell me, is it common to have a physician in a space like this and functioning in a space like this like we have?
It's actually not. There are various assistive technologies, but I will say assistive technology clinics, but I would say that it's pretty rare to have a physician embedded right on site as part of the team. All the clinics work with physicians in some capacity, but having a person right there as part of the team has a lot of value, especially having a physiatrist there. A physiatrist can be very helpful in a lot of different ways, being a part of that team.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. And we're really fortunate to have that expertise here locally as well. So when patients come to the CAT, they have a comprehensive assessment. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important and why not, if there's something available, can't they just, purchase it? Is it something you can just get off of Amazon or do you need to be fitted for these things? How does that work?
Yes, technology is available everywhere, right? And people have a hard time sometimes figuring out what's right for them. And sometimes you find something and you're tempted to get it for yourself, especially if it's low cost. But there's lots of reasons why you should have a comprehensive evaluation. One is a clinic like CAT or even our new innovation center can provide the opportunity to demo equipment. So you can try it out before you actually decide if it's right for you. You can figure out if you can actually operate it. Are there accessibility issues to it? You will be able to, with input from the specialist, you'll be able to determine whether it's compatible with other devices you might use. There are devices that operate on Bluetooth, and sometimes we need different devices that you might be using for other reasons to be compatible with this new product. You might need special fitting, special training. There's different funding streams available for different technologies. And then also, I mentioned standards. An expert will know whether certain technologies have met common standards or not. And so an expert can really give you a lot of guidance into choosing the type of product that's right for you.
Are there ergonomic considerations? I'm thinking particularly about mobility equipment and how your group has done so much work in designing appropriate mobility equipment. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about ergonomic considerations, because that's something I think people think a lot about.
Yeah, when we think of ergonomics, we think of comfort, pain management. We think of positioning people so that they can be most functional and have good endurance, and also safety. And so all of these things we have to consider. A lot of advanced technologies, especially a lot of the ones I talked about, need to be custom fit. They aren't off the shelf devices. So not only are you evaluated, but generally when that device, it has to be custom ordered for you. And then when it comes in, you have to come in and be custom fit to it. So it's like getting a very specialized pair of shoes, that needs to fit you just right.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the things that you talked about clearly have applications to mobility, or what we call activities of daily living. I
Mhm.
wonder if you could talk a little bit about other types of technology for sports, for example, or other things that are gaining popularity.
Yeah, so there are technologies for every sport. Um, People generally, if you're a serious athlete, you generally don't use your everyday wheelchair for the sport that you participate in. So you would want a custom wheelchair for different sports. There are technologies besides the wheelchair itself that allow you to participate in different sports. And so, it's really important to consult experts, and get experience and try out different technologies. A lot of the adaptive sports organizations, especially the ones here in Pittsburgh, offer that opportunity too. You can go and try out equipment before you go out and buy something or get something custom made for yourself.
Yeah, and it's nice to see these things blend. We had a rehab reels a few weeks ago that talked about adaptive sports and what a growing community we have here locally in adaptive sports. And so having access to this kind of cutting edge technology, I think, is going to allow those sports to really kind of grow and thrive. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about access to these technologies. So, obviously some things would be covered by insurance, but I suspect other things are not. And so what are some of the ways that people are finding to be able to access some of these things that can help them?
Yeah, so out of a lot of the technologies that I talked about that are offered at the Center for Assistive Technology, traditional Medicare covers mobility devices and communication devices, but there are other types of devices that might require, looking into alternative funding streams. The Veterans Administration is a great supporter of assistive technology, so folks who are veterans can get a wide variety of devices through the VA. Another big source of funding is vocational rehab. So vocational rehab is a state program which will sometimes fund technologies if your goal is to use the technology for work or school. So we use that a lot for technologies like hearing aids or computer access devices, or even for adaptive driving. There are foundations that will fund assistive technologies. So an example is that there's a foundation that will fund some adaptive sports equipment if you're committed to participating in sports. And there's also some unique special programs that we know about. For example, there's a program that will fund technologies for people who are farmers in Pennsylvania. So that's another reason, to see an expert, because they can sort of lead you to the possibilities of funding for whatever device you might need.
Do some connect the dots.
Mhm. Yeah,
Does philanthropy play a role in helping people to access equipment?
it can. It definitely can. Some foundations have some equipment that's been donated to them, or they may have funds that are available. A lot of these foundations are focused on specific conditions, so you may be able to get some devices through, an organization like that.
Yeah, so another reason to help with that networking, right? That can be so powerful. You brought up the new Assist Plus program in the New Mercy Vision and Rehab Pavilion. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you envision this interacting with the CAT, and how these two programs might have some synergy, and interact to reach more people.
Absolutely. So, one of our rehabilitation engineers is spearheading the innovation space at Assist Plus. He has a history. He already works very closely with our clinicians at CAT. What we find is that oftentimes people use a whole variety of technologies. So, they may be coming to CAT for their wheelchair, for example, but they may also need to use our innovation space for other technologies, and we can all work together as a team to figure out, how all these technologies can complement each other, and what works best, for this particular person. um, we do see it integrating really well into our outpatient PM&R services and outpatient therapy services. Patients will encounter a lot of different technologies along the way and learn about them, but then they'll need information about, like, how can I get them for myself? And this space can really introduce people to those technologies, allow them more experience with them, and then help them get them.
That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
exciting new portal for people. Um, so you talked a little bit about the the overlap between how you prototype something and that iterative process where you work with people who are going to be using the technology early on and then repeatedly during the development of the technology, which I think is so important. And this idea of nothing without us, nothing about us without us is
Mm.
critical, so that this novel technology doesn't end up in someone's closet, right?
Exactly.
So talk a little bit more about that next step. You mentioned sometimes partnering with industry. What does that look like? And how does the research team and the clinical team interact with industry in order to leverage those new developments and new discoveries so that they can be disseminated more widely?
So some research and development projects are industry funded. So there's sometimes ways that we partner with industry at the very beginning, and we work with them to provide the clinical and engineering input to get their ideas to become a product. Sometimes the product is something that we develop, and we then license it to a company. Or sometimes our engineering students who graduate, their interest and goals are to be an entrepreneur, and they will go off and start a new company, and we can get the products out that way. And then there's at the VA, we're part of a program called TTAP, or the Technology Transfer Assistance Project. And this is, we're basically a source for clinicians and people to come to us with their problems, and early ideas that maybe they don't have the resources to develop into a product. And we can partner with them, help them with licensing and patenting and invention considerations, and ultimately figure out the market or pathway, to get that product out there to help people. We do that particularly in the VA, and the VA has a lot of resources for that.
So it's another partnership that you
Exactly. Mhm.
another kind of piece of the puzzle to make this all work. It's great. So you talked a little bit about the life cycle of assistive technology. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about who defines that and how that gets defined. Because I suspect that there are situations where it's defined by payers, insurers.
Mhm.
And there may be a different definition by either the user or the developer of the technology. So I wonder if you could talk about how those life cycles are determined, and is there opportunity for discussion once they are determined?
Sure. Yeah, the life cycle of a wheelchair, for example, that I was giving, which is, generally 5 years, is set by so some of the international standards basically test wheelchairs to predict what would happen if they're used for 5 years. So a lot of um, funding sources like insurance companies will base their policies on those standards. So, for example, they might not want to replace a wheelchair for 5 years because that's what the typical lifespan of the chair might be. So, if you prescribe the wrong thing to a patient, sometimes that can cause a problem because they may not be eligible to get something else for 5 years, and so the person's prognosis really needs to be considered in that situation. But that can pose a problem when you have issues with like repairs. Repairs are a big issue. Repairs and maintenance of devices along that life cycle are a big problem for a lot of people. Repairs take a long time. Sometimes your chair is inoperable. While you're waiting to get a repair, you may not have your chair with you, so you're basically left stranded. And so the research that we're doing is really trying to frame and gather data around that repair issue so that we can help promote positive change in policy to get these things with better coverage, better repair services, and so forth.
So that's really data-driven advocacy work that you're doing to try to influence those changes that
Yes.
is with people who are really using the technology.
Yeah, there's other research that's been done here at Pitt as well by our partners in the spinal cord injury model systems that have done great work in the area of repairs too.
Yeah, very, very important work, because as you mentioned, you can't be without your wheelchair and still have independence and mobility. So it's a huge issue that
Mhm.
people don't think a lot about. That a flat tire is not just a flat tire as we think about it, right? Um, yeah, so super important work in addition to creating the technology. You introduced us to the I'm Here platform, which of course everyone's thinking a lot about telehealth now, over the last 3 years and how we can interface. And certainly even a platform like this was not something any of us regularly used, 4 years ago.
Mhm.
So I think this is such exciting such an exciting way for patients to be connected with their entire care team at all times. And of course, your research has shown some very positive outcomes already. I think one thing people are asking a lot of questions about is data security these days.
Mhm.
It's top of mind. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you've done with your technologies to ensure your confidence in that data security.
Yeah, so I mean, it starts from, your interactions and counseling with the patient. So you want to talk about, appropriate use of the system and make sure that they understand what they're using and consenting to use of the system, and they realize its benefits and limitations. Once they decide to use it, our system is fully HIPAA compliant. So we store and transmit data safely. The cloud-based way that data is stored is HIPAA compliant. And so, yeah, that's something that needs to be taken very seriously, especially when you're integrating the technologies with other technologies, because there's transmission of data. So you want every step of the way, to be compliant with data security.
Yeah, no, so super important and very top of mind right now for people, I think. So I want to go back to the discussion we had about repairs, because there was a comment in the chat as well about this. And so certainly we do, in addition to the formal consultations, we have a yearly wheelchair tune-up that we do, where we have people come and can offer some assistance. There's a question about hearing about bike shops actually
Mhm.
doing repairs and help to improve the lifespan and refurbish some wheelchairs. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, or if you've had experience with that.
Yeah, that's becoming, fairly popular for a couple reasons. One is bike repair shops have supplies and expertise needed for, some of the simple repairs and maintenance that needs to be done sometimes. So, and they're sometimes more easily accessible. But I think people are also using them because they're having trouble going through the typical means of getting the repairs and maintenance done by their vendors. So, there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is the reimbursement model of insurers for repairs and maintenance. It's not prioritized as high as it should be in coverage policies. There's also, a lack of staff and personnel to do those. It's partially related to the lack of reimbursement. So that is an area that we really want to improve, because what's really important is access to the services. And it's also important for people to understand there's certain things that people can do themselves as well. There's some simple maintenance that people can do on their chairs. And that's something that sometimes people aren't taught and can also be helpful.
That's great. That's great. So, we live and work in Western Pennsylvania, which is an interesting terrain. It's hilly, it's bumpy, there's snow, there's rain, there's a lot of things to navigate. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the unique challenges here, either as it relates to wear and tear, or different types of assistive technology needs in the local area.
Yeah, I think the weather plays a big role. We have, moisture. Like I said, a lot of, tech battery technologies and electronics can be very sensitive to moisture and wetness. That's why we're looking at alternative power sources. Cold can be a big issue. You can't leave your device outside in really low temperatures. Hills. Our terrain here can be a big problem. People can have trouble propelling their wheelchair up hills or controlling their chair if it's powered on hills. Um, uh, Sometimes, there are certain devices that may not have enough battery power or oomph to actually get up a hill. So those are all things that need to be considered too when we're evaluating people for the different types of technologies. There's different types of power wheelchair bases that operate differently depending on the surface that you're trying to drive over. So we have to think about these things. Do you live on a farm? Do you live where there's gravel or snow or a steep driveway? We ask all those questions when we're evaluating people.
It's really important and particularly unique, I think, here too as well. You have people from all over the place though coming, right? So we don't just draw from Western Pennsylvania for people coming to access these technologies, right?
No, we have such unique services that people come from. I've had people come from far out of state to see us, to solve a complex issue.
Yeah, even internationally. I
Mhm.
understand.
Sure.
And yeah, for the unique offerings. So I know we're coming close to the top of the hour here. I wonder if we could just end by talking a little bit about education and how we kind of train and encourage the next generation of folks to get involved in this space. You mentioned your interest developed as early as in high school. When you had experiences and exposures, and you yourself have been very involved in training programs. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how to attract young professionals to this space, and also what kinds of backgrounds do people have to be an engineer, or what kind of backgrounds do people need to get involved in this sort of work?
I mean, we have, we welcome all kinds of trainees into our clinic. We have trainees who are medical students and residents from all different disciplines, not just PM&R, but geriatrics and internal medicine, and people who are interested in becoming clinicians will interact with people with disabilities in some way. Physicians will order assistive technology for their patients, so it's really important to learn about it. Really, if you're in medicine at all. On the PIT side, we have trainees that are in different engineering disciplines and rehab science and technology, communication science. So assistive technology is relevant to so many different disciplines. And I think the key is to offer experiences as early as possible so that people get exposed early, because that really changes the trajectory of the, the specialties that they might be interested in going into.
Yeah, well, this is certainly a great hub. Lots of great mentors for them to learn from. So wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much. It is absolute pleasure to hear about this exciting work. And I always learn something every time I hear you talk. And I'm sure everyone listening tonight and those who will listen in the future will learn lots. And hopefully it inspires some folks to get involved in some of this important work. So thank you so much, Brad, for joining us and sharing both the research, but also the innovations and the advocacy work that you're doing. So.
Thank you, Gwen, as chair, and thank you to the department for being so supportive of, an innovation environment that lets us do all of these things. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Andy. Close us out.
Yes, that is all the time we have this evening. Dr. Soa, Dr. DiCiano, thank you so much for such an exciting and informative discussion. For anyone who had a question we were unable to get to today, or if you would like to learn about ways to support rehabilitation at UPMC and the University of Pittsburgh, please contact me at raz37@pitt.edu. And to everyone who joined us this evening, please be on the lookout for future sessions of Rehab Reels, and have a wonderful evening.